Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another series with Educator Thomas. Today we'll be examining polymer sciences. Polymer sciences. Now, what's a polymer science? It has to do with the textile or the clothing axis of science. We're using primarily a PET bottle as an illustration or an example. Now, oftentimes when we visit the eatery, we'll be given the PET Coke, PET Fanta, PET soft drinks generally. But we never imagined getting to know what PET exactly meant. What does it mean? Now, what does it stand for? So PET is an acronym for polyethylene terephthalate. It is an acronym for polyethylene terephthalate. Now, polyethylene terephthalate are of two kinds. We have the pre-consumer polyethylene terephthalate and the post-consumer polyethylene terephthalate. Now, the pre-consumer polyethylene terephthalate is smoother, is finer, is attractive and glossy when you see them. They are also PET bottles. They are bottles that when you buy, they look fine, they look good, they look crispy at hand. And these are what we call the pre-consumer PET bottles. Now another one is when we talk about the post-consumer PET bottles. Those ones are gritty and they are harsh, they are coarse in nature. Unlike the pre-consumer that is attractive, that is flashy, that is glittery. So both are materials used in textile industry for making clothing, wool, linen, cotton. Now, these processes are enormous, and we have impurities of all of these PET bottles, both pre and the post-consumer PET bottles. The impurities are the cap rings, the polyvichloride, the PVCs, what we call PVCs, the polyvichloride. We have the glue and the flakes, we have metals, we have rubbers, we have wood as impurities. So these are common impurities that are found in sortings of either the pre-consumer PET bottles or the post-consumer PET bottles. Now, I haven't talked about the impurities. Where are these things being processed? There is a general association that is involved in West African axis that is called the WAPR, the West Africa PET Recycling Factory. This is a place where the sorting of all of these pre-consumer PET bottles and post-consumer PET bottles are being done. Now, after sorting, cap rings, PVCs, glues and flakes, wood, metals, aluminium are being extracted and kept aside. Then the PET bottle is ready to be refined. What do I mean by it's being refined? It will be crushed into flakes. Now, flakes are extractive remnants gotten from PET bottles after it's been crushed. So it will be washed with fine sodium hydroxide, NaOH concentration, concentrated one, to wash thoroughly so that it makes it more cleaner. Then it's taken to another section that is called the erema. Now the erema section, what is being done there is these flakes are being melted and stretched in the erema section, and they will cut them into chips. Now when it's being melted and being cut into chips, it's taken to another technical company or factory that is called the OPR room, that is oil pickup room, that we call them spinneret room. Now what happens to these chips in the spinneret room? In the spinneret room, what happens is the chips have been furtherly stretched because they are in yarns, are stretched into wool or linen, depending whether it's a pre or it's a post. Now after it goes through the OPU units called the spinneret room, then it's furtherly taken towards a stretcher conduit. Stretcher conduit is a place where the power company of the production supply two types of water: the boiler water and the condensate water. Is generated from the powerhouse. Now the powerhouse of any company is the steam house, where all of these things are being done. Now you can't shut down the powerhouse. They have chambers, they have hoggers, they have connections that are linked through every other noodles or roots that got to this very point. Now the chips is furtherly extended and they are drawn into yarns, and there's a bit of watering in it. That's where you find the moisture content of that particular PET bottles, whether it's pre, whether it's post. But the good news is, if it's pre and final, the job is much more done than when it's post. Post is kind of much more harder in absorbing solvents. so that it can stretch easily. So pre-consumer PET bottle stretches easily because it's fine, it's better, it's not gone through any rigorous action, nobody has chewed somewhere, it has not gone through hardened surfaces are clean and pure crystals. So when these are done, it's being stretched into yarns, and there little drops of solvent, organic solvent, could be in form of extracts of petroleum, and being dropped to soften it. Then it goes through a particular section that is called the MFL, met flow indexer. Then a certain test is run on it, but that's the laboratory part. We'll get to that part. So we'll talk about the MFI, the MFL, the ovonating, the moisture content, getting the premium per mole, precision balances, and what have you. So that is the laboratory part. But now I'm just explaining the physical aspect of PET getting into clothing materials. Now when it does leave this stage, we go to the next stage. That is what? That is the final stage of gradation or sampling. At that point, wool are separated, linen are separated, cotton are separated, be it post-consumer PET bottle, be it pre-consumer PET bottles. So at this point in time, we know where this is headed. Gradation in Europe takes A, not South Americans and Asians do take B, then African take C. You wonder why it's African taking C now, because it's disregarded as a dump site and they might not be able to afford the gradation of A and B in terms of quality for the textiles. That is the perception of the expatriates that are involved in all of this. So when all of these things are done, then we go into the laboratory angle of PET bottles. Before it's been converted, you've gotten your wool, you've gotten your linen, you've gotten your cotton. How is this thing now being transcended into clothing, boxers that are made, singlets, underwears, pajamas, and what have you? How do we get there? Wool, even the knitted hood I'm putting on, how do we get about all of those? So these are what? These are the enumerations of what? Of PET bottles, making of what? Of clothing materials. Of what? Of clothing materials. So these are things we would be opening our eyes to. Go the next segment would be on we looking carefully on the laboratory angle contributions to the text of all of these factories and companies that have made mention that brought about the success of the PET bottles being used as a clothing material. So next time you see people going around picking PET bottles, polyethylene bottles, what you call your plastic bottles all around, it's useful because it's used as a textile, objects to make clothing materials of different kind. Jerseys are made from pre-consumers. Jerseys, slicks, swimming trunk, swimming shorts are made from pre-consumers. Then the one I'm putting on the wool and the hood and all of are made up of cotton and linen, of course. So till when I come your way again, we'll be talking about the chemical analysis of all of this PET bottles formation. Thanks for having me.